FastTrackGrad live program. This is one of my favorite sessions we've done for a while because you're going to see we're going to go deep and lift the lid on how you can craft a winning grant application. No exaggeration, you get this right, you are going to find yourself having more funding than you know what to do with. And I'm not exaggerating, I just won a €2 million grant from the European Research Council. It's the second time I've done this. And collectively, I've got Professor McNamara in the studio with me. We've won over 10 million in funding over the past decade. So we're going to share some of our top secrets. You're not going to want to miss this. It's going to be relevant to you if you're applying for a PhD, if you're applying for a postdoc, if you're an early career researcher trying to get on the tenure track. Getting funding consistently and convincing others of the importance of your research is indispensable. With that, I'm going to flash over to Professor McNamara. Courtney, hit us with your quick tip this week.
Yep, so my quick top tip this week is to be realistic about your expectations of your senior colleagues' time. So here, I mean, if you're having a supervision meeting and you need your supervisor to read something, submit something at least a week in advance. If you're submitting a paper to a co-author and they're quite senior and have a busy schedule, then it could take them up to a month to get back to you. And it's really nice when students understand that, and it can be quite frustrating when they don't and they expect a quick turnaround. What do you think, David?
I hope my students are listening to this, because so often, I mean, no exaggeration, just yesterday somebody sent me something, hey, I need this rec letter in and it's due tomorrow. I'm like, do you think I've got nothing better to do? I was just sitting, waiting for your request to come in my inbox. I could just jump on it immediately. It's just like, I think if you show respect for the people you're working with, as it applies in all areas of life, you're just going to generate goodwill and get people to invest more in you. So that kind of respect of their time, it's just gonna pay itself over many times. So great tip, Courtney. I mean, have you experienced some of that on your side too?
Yeah, I've experienced it some on my side too. And I think, like, for students that I have a good relationship with who are, respectful of my time in that way, then if there does come a time where they need something, like, oh, I'm so sorry, like this thing came up, it has a deadline of this day, can you read this abstract for me? Then I'm much more likely to do that and to be okay with it than if, you're always doing this.
100%. Now, one thing I do want to say, for many people, one of the biggest frustrations they have is they contact their supervisors and they feel like they never get an answer. And that's one of the reasons why we created our Fast Track Inner Circle program, so that those of you who want to really fly, or maybe feel like you've been stuck and you're not getting the help you need, we've created a program where you can have access to Courtney and I, even on a daily basis, so that you never get stuck, you get fast responses, and you can make the most of the investment that you're making in yourself right now in your training and research career. So if any of you are interested in that, do drop us a line. By the way, be sure to join our Facebook group. And it's a great way to be in touch with us in the direct messages. We've got over 30 hours of masterclasses on everything from productivity, mindset, like combating imposter syndrome, all those kind of soft skills that you need, as well as some hard skills like academic writing that we just don't teach enough to our students. So check it out. You're going to get a lot of value. Our philosophy is to give you guys so much value, 100% free, that we hope some of you will want to work with us more closely, but if not, that's totally okay. But do check out the live trainings. Okay, with that, Courtney, I want to dive in straight to this proposal. And I think what's fun about this is one that you're going to put in. And so give us a little bit of a background, because I think it's helpful for people when they're thinking about grants. There's so many different grants and so many different lines out there. The very first thing I think to do is, how do you know that you should go for this? So tell us a little bit about your thought process at the very beginning stages where we're at here.
Yeah, so my thought process at the very beginning, actually, it didn't come from the research itself. It came from seeing the proposal, the call for proposals. Because I'm undertaking some work with some colleagues on a specific project, and this project could very easily be scaled up. We'll talk about a little bit the topic more later, but this project is also very time sensitive. So it relates to specific world events that are going on right now. So I saw this call for proposals on this English The NIHR. David, what is that? The National
Institute of Health Research. So yeah, just by the way, because sometimes people are just kind of lost. Where do I even see these calls and proposals? How did this come on the radar? Your colleagues mentioned it to you, or you were just on an email alert, or what happened?
Yeah, so I'm very new to the English research grant institutions because I was working in Norway before. So this came through a university listserv. So this was sent to me.
Okay,
That's how I
which
came
is
to it.
already a great point. For some of you looking for funding, many of your universities, they want to encourage you to get funding because, well, what university doesn't want you to bring money to them? And they have listservs, they have infrastructure, they have librarians, they have others who will help you. And you just need to ask to find how you can get plugged into that. I know on our side, we have a system called Research Professionals, and I've got an automated keyword search for anything that's kind of in my wheelhouse in the research I want to do. So I'm automatically notified of the things that the university is interested in and the things that I'm interested in. So highly encourage you guys to get on that if you don't already. Okay, so Courtney, so then you got that.
Yeah, and then I just opened it up and I saw that there was this call called a rapid funding scheme. And I thought this could be really cool if we could use this to scale up this already in motion research project that we have, because we could see definitely a potential for it to be scaled up a bit more.
So hang on, let me just add to that. I just want to bookend because I think there's a really important point there. I think sometimes people think, oh, I have this idea, I've never done it before, I want to go try to get money to implement it. And actually, I think that's not the best way to go. It's kind of a naive way of thinking about how to apply for grants. In theory, that's correct. That's how the system should work. But in practice, what often works is you already have a concept that maybe you've largely proven or demonstrated, and you've got a pretty good idea that this is going to be successful. That is your ideal time to think about writing for a grant for it. I know some colleagues who will apply for a grant actually on a topic where they've already started and sometimes even nearly finished the research. And they do that because it's so much easier to articulate and convey to the people who are evaluating it. So yeah, Courtney, is that how was that your thinking there? That just you have a project that's ongoing. Yeah. You wanted to plug it in because you have many projects. You could have thought of something brand new. Why was that your thinking?
Well, yeah, and it relates to the particulars of the call. So we'll look at it in a minute. But the call requires that you have reasons why this project has a specific urgency. So why would you need to be rapidly funded? So this project spoke to that urgency.
So this is really nice. There's another key point that you've made there. And we're talking about grant applications here. It's every grant proposal, the funders, they're giving you money, but they want something for it. So they are going to have very specific criteria of what they're looking for. So I see somebody just asked in the comments, they're asking for EU funding for PhD students. Well, you might want to look at Marie Curie or some of the other lines, and they are going to have details of specific things that they're looking for. So when we go through and look at this together, Courtney, I'm going to really want to pay attention to those specific eligibility criteria and the things they're trying to maximize. The other thing I want to say is some of you will remember a sequence we did on research proposals. We have our gift method. All that's going to apply here. If you're interested in checking out our gift method on research proposals, let me know and I'll plug you into that. Okay, so Courtney, so you saw the rapid call. Were there any other specificities of this proposal that, as you're combing through it, that jumped out to you? And I think Courtney just moved into new house in Newcastle. I think internet may be lagging. Yeah, there you are. Okay, I think Courtney's lagging for a second. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm actually going to pull this up and take a look at this together and think about how we can begin to structure this for Courtney. So let me share my screen here. And here we go. I'm going to go into Slack, and hopefully you guys can all see this. If you can't see this, let me know. Okay, So here I'm looking at the rapid funding scheme. And this is really, you need to always make sure you do this and refer to this very, very closely as you're going forward here. This is really, really critical. So let's just jump through and see what some of the main highlights are here. So we can see it's this rapid funding scheme. I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little bit better. It's a rapid funding scheme. And so what is the purpose here is to conduct rapid baseline data collection and feasibility work prior to implementing an intervention. And they want to see that there's unique time-limited opportunities. Okay, so this is critical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out and I'm actually going to move this into a Word document because what's going to happen to these reviewers is they're going to be looking at this and they're going to be ticking boxes often. Does this meet these criteria? Does this include the things that we want? And this is something they definitely want. We need to make sure whatever we're proposing hits this. Just one other little trick of the trade I want to share with you is often when I'm writing a proposal, I'll use their own language. And the reason is sometimes there's a risk, especially if we're working across multiple fields, multiple disciplines, that things can get lost in translation. People just, an economist and maybe a chemist or maybe an epidemiologist don't speak the same language. But guaranteed, if you're looking at the language of the funding call, the message is probably going to get through in the right way. And you're going to make sure you tick the boxes that the reviewers are going to have for evaluating. So guys, if anything is unclear at all, do let me know because I want you to feel good that you can do this. So as you go through, look at the funding call closely. And now I want to make sure that we're covering the eligibility gap. And here's something that says what's excluded. Definitive answers to questions to inform service provision. Exactly. So they're seeing this as a little bit of a pilot. Hey, that there's a golden opportunity and we want to see if you can prepare and then using that, maybe take advantage of this unique opportunity for an intervention that's about to happen. Okay, so we're going to need to specify that. The next thing here that we need to look at in this particular one is these criteria. And they lay it out for you. Make sure you do this. So if you don't tick these boxes, there's a problem. So why the work could not have been proposed earlier? That's great. So I'm going to move this to my Word document. I got to make sure I cover this. I'm just using my strip method, the same thing I might do in literature review, just stripping out the key stuff, make a convincing case to the urgency and why that data collection needs to happen now. So that's good. Very good here. And I think Courtney's got some good answers to these, but we're going to check it. And this is all standard. Have study team already established. So this is also important because they're saying they want to do it on a quick timeline. So they want to see that you have a team already ready, not that you're going to go hire new people. Meet the remit of the program. So we need to then, this is another clue, we need to go look at the program and start capturing language from that specific program. I'm not necessarily going to do that now, but that's also very, very important to show that we're right on the money, literally, for what they're looking for. And it's quite rapid. And here, no more than 2 sides of A4 in length. So this is a very short proposal. I want, Courtney, I don't know if you're still there. I think we have lost Courtney, so hopefully she'll jump back on. But I just want to add a couple things here as I go into the work document. So sometimes researchers ask me, well, why? And I'm going to take some questions from you as hopefully we can get Courtney back here in a second. So, sometimes researchers will ask, well, should I go for these small grants or should I go for a big grant? And the answer is it really kind of depends. So I find the amount of work sometimes for a small grant can be as much as the work for a huge 2 million grant. In this case, the amount of work for this 50,000 grant is not that much. It's just 2 pages. Whereas the recent one that I got through the European Research Council, that was a beast. That was over 30 pages of writing, tons of forms, paperwork to fill out. So you kind of do need to calibrate the expected value. Many people will advise to say you need to get a track record. So start small, get some funding, show you can deliver on it, and then funders will feel more confident giving you bigger funding. I'd say yes and no to that because the very first grant I ever won out the gate, hadn't had grants before, was over €1 million. So I wouldn't be shy necessarily about going for big grants. So I'm just getting a comment. Some of you are saying that the screen is blackened. Yeah, I'm not sharing the screen at the moment, but I'm going to share it here in a second. So thanks, Rana, for letting me know about that. I'm going to go back to the screen, though. It looks like you should be able to see my video, though. And hopefully, again, Courtney's going to jump back on. So, and speaking of which, I think I just got the notification that Courtney's back. But I'm going to go back now to the Word document and talk about how to set this up. And Courtney's going to come hopefully back and fill us in on the details here. So, okay. So what we need to do. So what I know of Courtney's project, I don't know everything, is that the United Kingdom is about to enter into a huge new trade agreement. And those of you we have a lot of people who work in public health. These trade agreements really reconfigure our economies. They have huge impacts on our lives, from everything we eat to how our houses are constructed, our neighborhoods change, the types of works and sectors that our economy emphasizes. So these can be quite powerful. And so Courtney wants to set up the infrastructure to evaluate this trade deal. And what does that mean? She needs to do baseline data collection. So she's going to tick this baseline data collection box by saying, hey, this major event is going to happen. And for us to learn from it, we need to have the right baseline in place. Otherwise, we're going to miss that opportunity. So she's really speaking right on the money to what's going on there. And so that hits there prior to intervention implementation. And what you can say is a unique time-limited opportunity. That is this convincing case of urgency. So that's going to come right up front. And then here it also talks about a natural experiment. Well, we can't really do a randomized controlled trial of a trade deal. So this is a natural experiment, natural in the sense that the experiment is outside the control of the researchers. We're not putting people in a lab setting. So that ticks the box there. Be clear why the work couldn't have been proposed earlier. Well, the deal hadn't happened. And I have to ask Courtney if you got the team ready. So we need to look at this. I'm going to italicize that. We need to go back and go there. So as I go through this, so what is the clear? I feel confident we meet the eligibility. And so we need to say, now we need to go back to our gift method, which you remember, it has the components gap, your idea, we need to show feasibility, and the timeline, which is along the way going to meet some of the criteria that we have to meet. So the gap here is that we're going to have, basically, and I like to make this as simple as possible so you have clarity about the gap and what your idea is going to be. So I think the simple gap that we're going to set up here for ourselves is, the new UK trade deal will have a huge impact on the public's health, but we don't know if it will be good or bad, and if bad, how to mitigate any potential harms. Right? So something along that. Big gap. There's new deal. We don't know what it's going to do, and we need to monitor it. So your idea is, this idea now needs to be connected to the call specifically. And your idea is to set up baseline monitoring so that we can, in real time, monitor the impact of the trade deal and spot and detect any groups who are adversely affected by it. Okay, so I'm just keeping things very, very simple, so that if I go out and I explain this to anybody, they're going to get it, because it's likely for some of these proposals, especially if it's a bigger one, you're going to need to explain this to a panel or committee. So you need to have this very clear. Okay, feasibility. This is an area that I think this is where you need to get into methodological detail. So you need to answer things. How will you collect the baseline data and convince them that you can actually do this? And it's not going to be super expensive outside the budget resources. So that's something you need to pay attention to, that you can actually do it within the budget and that you have a team ready to go, right? And this is exactly speaking to their criteria, have a successful team established and ready to go. The last thing I want, and we're not going to do this now, is you need to make sure you meet the remit of the PHR program. That's really key. So you need to go and look, and this is just a matter of going, say, into Google and say, NHR PHR program, and here you go into the funding program, and here it will tell you and give you the language that you're going to need to make sure you hit. here you go, research to generate evidence, to inform the delivery of non-NHS interventions. So you might say something like trade is one of the biggest non-NHS interventions that can impact the health of the public and either exacerbate or narrow inequalities in health. So you can directly link your specific gap you're in to their program. That's the extra thing you need to connect in. You don't just need to connect your gap to your idea, which is important, but your gap needs to be connected to the aims and motivations of the funding call. So I hope that helps. And I can see Courtney still has not got back, but this is kind of the direction I want to go on this. And what I like to do in the title of these, if you're going to come up with a title, is a title that's going to directly again speak to what the proposal is and what the aims are here. So I would say something along the lines of, evaluating the hidden impact on health and health inequalities of the UK's new trade deal. And I can't remember the name. Courtney's more subject area on this. A stat, and maybe this could be establishing a monitoring system for a natural experiment. So you have to work on this, but I want to make sure my title is again ticking the boxes of what we're doing with the rapid baseline data collection, and that it's prior to this. So this is just a working title. We're going to have to really put our heads together and think about that a little bit more. But something on this, we got to speak to the PHR program, and we got to speak to this specific rapid funding schemes call. Maybe it's detecting it. So we'll think about that. So guys, I want to spin back to you for a second and see if you have any specific questions about this approach, and if you think that you yourself could start to do this. And I see Courtney. I think Courtney. Hey, Courtney, you're back. Welcome back. Hey.
Sorry about that.
So Courtney, while I was there, kind of taking over the reins for a second, did that approach make sense? And have I gone too far off what your thinking was?
No, you look pretty on target. It's just we do have a specific method that we will be using, which is called a health impact assessment. So that would go under in terms of the feasibility and our methods and such.
That's great. So one of the things in convincing of feasibility as well is to say we've deployed this method before to things that are just like this and got great results. It kind of makes them feel more confident that you're going to get a great result too because you did it in the past. So it reduces the risk for those funders and what you're trying to do. So that really fits well. Okay. Any other things, Courtney, that I think really based on my view here, you're kind of close. Then you've got all the nuts and bolts in place that you could blast this out in 48 hours.
Yeah, it's and they're only asking for 2 pages. So really, you've already outlined at least 4 to 6 paragraphs. So nearly there now.
Yeah, there's a lot to compact in a short amount of space. The other thing I want to ask, Courtney, it was a key criterion for them, having a team ready to go. Is that something you can convince them of?
Yep. So there's the colleagues that we're working on with now to do a small health impact assessment. And we have some also colleagues in mind for scaling it up. So we do have an established team ready to go.
Okay. And if somebody was going to criticize you, Courtney, and say, I think this is weak, what do you think they would criticize you for? Always good to kind of be your own advocate on this. Really make yourself bulletproof.
Yeah, we've submitted a sort of think piece on our idea, and we've gotten some feedback from the reviewers, which can give us an idea of the sort of weaknesses actually or the things that someone might come back to us with, or what might be a problem area that we need to show that is actually not a problem area. And one of them was what actually good does a health impact assessment do if you know that the agreement is going to go through anyways, and that it's likely that
this is really great. I'm going to share the screen again, because I think these are the kinds of things you also then, once you get your nuts and bolts in place, you need to anticipate and overcome objections. So I'm just to drop this here. Anticipate and overcome potential objections. So objection 1 that you're going to need to cover here in that's going to go kind of, you need to address that and slip it into the idea stage, is that, well, what good is a health impact assessment if it's going to happen anyway?
Yeah.
Okay. And it sounds like you got a good answer for that.
Yeah, we have a good answer. So it's important to do the assessment because we can still look at mitigating factors, even if the
yeah, and you saw I was kind of foreshadowing this here with mitigating
Yeah.
potential harms, because I had a feeling that could
Yeah.
come up. Okay, and what else? What are some other objections? You guys
Yeah,
really
another objective.
hard about what people will attack you for.
Yeah, they might say, has health impact assessment ever done any good? Has it somehow done something, you know, to the relationship between trade and health? And we also have an answer
very
for
helpful.
that.
And I think there's some really nice
Yeah.
studies on just background knowledge here on tobacco that can show that. But that's really helpful to say,
Yeah.
hey, the method that I'm going to use here actually has brought about a lot of good and would be really good here. That's really nice. So that's definitely something you're going to want to make sure you tuck in saying that we need to do this. So I said set up baseline monitoring, set up HIA, including necessary baseline monitoring. So that's good. Okay, what other things, Courtney?
Let's see.
What if some people say, well, this is ecological? What would you say to that? So some people will say, well, this is at the population level and we can't learn anything from the population level. What would you say?
Well, the nice thing about health impact assessment is that we can focus in on specific communities and social groups. So we wouldn't be looking at overall population health, but rather how health is distributed across certain social groups.
Okay, so you're going to say, yeah, you can look at individual groups. I would also spin back and say, well, this is actually the method recommended by the UK Medical Research Council.
Yeah, that's great.
For evaluating, because in this case, the intervention is at the population level. And then you can say, you can zoom into, with your approach, you're going to be able to zoom into individual groups. So, but I mean, I just wanted to do this to give you guys the texture of what could be these objections. And really, you want to leave yourself time to share this with colleagues so that you want to be bulletproof. They're going to be kind of slinging arrows at you, and you want to have armored yourself up so that they can just, those arrows will just bounce off your chainmail armor, whatever you got on. And this is one of the ways that you do that. So definitely before you start writing up, take time to anticipate these potential objections so that you can slip them in as you structure your proposal in the right part that you're going to talk about. Okay. Yeah, Courtney. So any other things that, just as we're going through this, I can see this shaping up rapidly. I want to take a few questions, but anything else that you think you've got a lot of experience here. Any other necessary ingredients that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, there's probably one other big limitation that someone might raise, which is, trade negotiations are often done in secret. So how can you assess the health impacts of something you don't know fully about? And of course, here the reply is that actually this is an already existing agreement and we know what the provisions are, and we can be fairly positive that the UK has very little negotiating room.
So this is important, Courtney. So this is actually what you're saying, these potential objections. Several of these objections are, this is just something people might believe, but that's something that they're believing is incorrect. But if you hadn't nipped this in the bud, that it could go back and you could get rejected for things that are actually incorrect, but because you hadn't addressed it, you weren't able, you don't ever get the opportunity to respond to it. So that's really important. If you know a lot of people are going to think this incorrect thing, that could make it look like your project's not feasible. So yeah, that's really strong.
I think also if you can lead your audience into, if they know that you've thought through at least some problems and you have replies for them, then you're kind of leading them through all the doubts that they could have, and then that leaves them less room to come up with new doubts in a way.
Yeah, I really like that. Courtney, I'm feeling very great about this proposal. I hope all of you can see when you go look at your proposal, whether you're applying for a PhD or a grant like Courtney is, that these are the same steps, the same efforts that you need to take to get this right. I'm going to take a couple questions. We got one here. Is there any sharp distinction between research seeking for grants and a student already doing a master's and PhD in terms of structure and what is needed to put in each of the two? Sorry, I joined you late. Yeah, what do you think about that, Courtney?
Yeah, so a student already doing his PhD in the structure, well, you know, the sort of gap idea that we outlined is the same across the two. So if you're seeking a grant as a PhD student, it might be to develop some of the ideas you've already established in your PhD. So yeah, again, following that gift method, David, that you already talked about. In that way, they're very similar.
Yeah. And somebody in the group has also commented in response, like that they like the gift and see why it's important to anticipate potential objections. That's good. I mean, I would say about this on the gap, so many students, Courtney, I think you can see this too. Many students we work with, often very good ones, even professors we work with, come in and are working on research projects, and they can't clearly set out what the gap is. I mean, you need that gap to be so crystal clear in your mind that you can jump in an elevator with us and tell us in 5-10 seconds, and we get it. Yeah. And you can say, oh, but my science is so complex, it's not possible. Find a way. Find a way. It takes work. And you got to have that clarity for your supervisors and for funders down the road. And it all starts with getting that clarity right now. So really ask yourselves, those of you who are watching this, if you have that level of clarity about your gap. And then there's different things on gaps, and not all gaps are created equal. Some gaps are going to be very sexy and important. And I think, Courtney, when it comes to funding, right, not all important research gets funded, just to say. But in general, the research that does get funded is important to somebody for some reason. And NIHR has expressed their priorities. And I think you've got a really nice gap that's exactly on the money for what they want. So I'm feeling really optimistic here about what you're doing. You know, if you sent this to, say, a different council like the Leverhulme that wants to fund more things that are kind of theoretical and creative, this would be dead on arrival. It's not right for them. It's just the wrong place to send it. So, and I do see students often do this. You got to do your due diligence, do your homework, and really dig into details about these funders before you spend all this time and energy putting something together, only to get very disappointed later if it's just kicked out and you're not even given a fair shake. Okay. Yeah, Courtney, go. Sorry, go off there.
Yeah, what you did in copying and pasting from the call for the proposals and into your Word document is exactly what I do too. I always have that there and I write into it or put it in another document and I use it as a checklist to go through at the end. Like, have I hit this? Have I hit this? Use their language and some variations of that language. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I love that. And I like it in a separate document as well, because then once you've written it up, you might have lost sight of something, and then you have that checklist to go back for. Because look, I've been on the side as a reviewer, and no exaggeration, you are given a checklist. How many points would you give for, is this value for money? How many points would you give for, is this innovative, or how well it meets our call? So make it easy for your reviewers to see all the value and how you're hitting all their criteria. Courtney, the other thing is sometimes you can figure out who's on the panel as well. We haven't gone to that next level, but have you started to look at who's on the panel, or?
No, I haven't gotten that far yet, but yeah, that's a great idea to look into. And,
the other thing I wanted to say is they also mentioned on the webpage that you can contact them. And I would encourage you, and anybody really, if you have that option, have a chat. Some of the big grants that I've won have come directly from having chat with funding officers, because they want to fund research that's relevant to them. And they can actually help you. Sometimes they're going to say, no, we can't. It's conflict of interest, it's bias. But oftentimes, look, if you can fish some information out of them that's going to give you a leg up, do it. Get your own unfair advantage. Other people are trying to, so you might as well too. They're not going to eliminate you for asking questions, asking information. Sometimes, if anything, they're just required to publish all those questions that they answer so that everybody can see it out of fairness. But still, that will also help you know if you're wasting your time. If they're not interested in it, then don't bother. And sometimes you can even just sniff that out subtly if you can talk to them on the phone or have a chat. So Courtney, I feel, again, like I said, I feel really good about this going forward. I'm cautiously optimistic. The other thing to really note, and this goes in the feasibility section, is kind of your profile, because there is an element that they're funding your project, but they're also funding you. And so the fact that you've got such a good track record here is going to help. There's a phenomenon in science known as the Matthew effect. And it's kind of like, why do the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? And effectively, some researchers compared the trajectories of people like myself who won the European Research Council grants compared with those who were just below the threshold and didn't get it. And they looked over their careers over time. And they found that the difference in funding and success for those who got the money, for those who just missed the cutoff, because they're saying, well, those who were just right there, they're both pretty good. But there was a huge compound effect over time that those who got the funding did well. We just had a rising trajectory. And those who didn't, many of them left science and went on a downhill trajectory. So, when you can start getting this, you get in this positive cycle of success. And success really begets success in science. And Courtney, you're kind of a shining example of that. We got one more question that came through here, and we're going more generally into research gaps. You give more emphasis on research gap more than any other stage of doing research. Can we say the gap is 80% important than any stage of doing research? What do you think about this, Courtney?
Yeah, I mean, I would even maybe say it's more than 80%. I mean, it's everything, really. Of course, you identify the gap, and then you also need to have the methods in place for you to address the gap, of course. But yeah, everything follows from the gap. It's like having the right structure for building a house. I think you've made that metaphor before, Dave.
Yeah, it's the foundation. If you got a wonky foundation, that's crooked. You build a house and it's just going to topple over. You got to make sure the whole starting point of your research is rock solid. So, I'd say 90% of researchers' success can be ascertained by how good a gap that they're dealing with. When it comes to research, someone once kind of gave the analogy, said, a lot of researchers are out there, and imagine they're all in boats, and some are in boats and they're paddling as hard as they can to try to get research done, and then they're going kind of slowly. Where there's others who are in boats and they're paddling as hard as they can too, but that boat happens to have like a motor engine on the back and it's just zipping right along, and you have equal effort. But some people are just in faster boats. And I think of that, the speed of the boat is almost like the hotness of your area that you're working in, the importance of the gap. And so kind of for the same work in, you might get, 3 times, 4 times the payoff out. And I've really seen this with some researchers who I thought were not as technically capable, not as intelligent, but happened to be in the right boat. They got way ahead faster than some of the brighter students I've worked with at Harvard and Oxford. They eventually got there too, paddling very hard. But if they had chosen a different boat, I think they would have gotten ahead much faster. Okay. So digressing a little bit, these are good questions, by the way. So really appreciate that, as this is really your opportunity as well. When you send us things to our Friday session, sometimes we do a training like this one. We want to share with you the insights of what Courtney and I deal with on a daily basis. But it's also an opportunity for you to get immediate feedback and help on your work. I want to share the screen because we did a poll in the group just to get your feedback on what you guys want to see from us. And we really appreciate that. We love hearing from you because our goal here is to serve open access as many people as we can. It's great for me to teach at Bocconi and Courtney at Newcastle, but this is, we can share with the whole world. We're very committed to open access. So let me share my screen. I just want to show you the results of this poll and encourage some of you to vote on it, because that's going to help us set the agenda for what we want to focus on coming up in these streams. And so, a lot of you have really emphasized that you want to do a systematic review challenge. So that's going to be Courtney and I doing a step-by-step review ourselves. Now I can't find the poll. Here's the poll right here. We've had a good 60 votes so far. And it looks like systematic review challenge, applying for jobs and fellowships, academic writing training are the top ones right now. So that's what we're going to calibrate and keep emphasizing for you. By the way, just to share with those of you, I was mentioning our master classes before. Some of you have asked, where can I find this? It's right here in our guide section. We've got several step-by-step courses with our own outlines that you can use and adopt. Then, like I said, we got several hours of productivity training, how to build your network. You're definitely going to want to check this out because you're not going to find this anywhere else. Really proud of what we've done with the community here. Okay, Courtney, any final thoughts for us in just kind of last remarks? Oh, wait, in terms of what you've learned in terms of proposal writing?
Yeah, for me, the most helpful, I think, piece of advice that I've learned is really making sure you match for every single requirement that they're listing, that you have something that speaks to it.
That's so key. That's so key. I mean, I have to say the success rates are so low for these grants. I know so many researchers, like the ERC, have won. It's under 10%, and you do a massive amount of work, and it just is crushing when you don't get it. And so, if you can get the match, you optimize your chances. But you also know if you can't get that match, maybe unless you talk to a program officer, maybe you're gonna save yourself a lot of time, frustration, and heartache in doing that. Got another question here. And I'm really glad that somebody's asking this. Do you need a big name on a research proposal? That is a fantastic question. I've got a strong opinion on this. Courtney, thoughts?
Yeah, so I think, in some cases it helps, and actually in some cases it can hurt. So when I was applying for some of the funding that I have now, it was a call for proposals to fund and increase the career of like up and coming researchers. And of course, I had some people involved that were what you might call big names. And that actually worried them because they thought, are they going to try and lead this project, or are you really going to lead this project? So I had to explain in my application and in the interview that in fact I would be leading and explaining how and what their roles were going to be. So it depends again on what the call for proposals is about.
Yeah, I think it's really important. The other thing I want to add to that is, when you get in bed with other faculty who are prominent, they have reputations, and that reputation can be good or it can be bad, and it depends on who's doing the evaluating. So, for example, if that professor, for whatever reason, has not delivered on past projects very well with that funder, you've just allied yourself with somebody who that funder doesn't want to fund, and you might not know that very easily. The other thing that can happen is maybe it could be that person has a philosophical difference with the funder. Says, I think this part of the field is important, where the funder wants to take a different approach. So you need to make sure there's an alignment in their perspectives and approaches. For example, this NIHR probably doesn't want to look at randomized controlled trials. They sound like they're more interested in natural experiments. So you get a fantastic professor who is known for randomized controlled trials. Your funding body here might scratch their head and think, this just doesn't look like such a good fit. What I do like to do, and strategically on this with professors and names, I like to create, especially for junior researchers, advisory boards. And I like to put people on those advisory boards, one who I think have the big names, who I think are going to be favorable, but they're just an advisory board. So there's no way there's that risk, Courtney, you were talking about, of being seen as they take over the project. And the second thing I like to do is I sometimes like to put on the advisory board people who I think would be hostile. It's kind of like the idea of keeping your enemies close, because I don't want my grant to be sent to those people. So if I can convince them to be on my advisory board, then they're not going to get sent the grant proposal for review. So just kind of one of those backhanded tricks that can sometimes be useful to some of you. Got another question I want to take. This is definitely opening us up way beyond this. But what makes a person a great researcher? I have to take this because it is Friday, and this is a question of almost in a way a much deeper question. I think of why you want to do research and what you want to be remembered for. I mean, there are people who others do not consider great in their lifetime, and then are seen as great after. So you need to ask yourself, in a way, is where your compass is kind of oriented to. Do you want to be the person who everybody thinks is terrible, and then maybe after your life you win Nobel Prizes and are celebrated and make huge contribution to humanity? or do you want to be the person who's commemorated as a great famous researcher today? Obviously, those are two extremes, but you do want to I think it's really important personally for any of you who are getting into the research to have your own internal compass set to why you're doing this, why you're passionate about this, and what difference do you want to make in the world. And I would judge your success that way. And that's not to say there aren't conventional metrics like H-index and citation counts and different awards. But me personally, I've always been guided by my internal compass of wanting to make a difference. And enough on that. You do need to tick the boxes along the way in the field. But I've interpreted your question in a more kind of deeper philosophical way. What do you think, Courtney?
Yeah, I like your answer. It's really nice, and it reminds me of the saying, like almost like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Like, what are you looking to get out of it? There's different ways of measuring great.
Yeah, exactly. So a really deep question. I would encourage all of you, though. Going into research is often a thankless area. I mean, the funding compared with industry. Right, Courtney and I could both cash in on our intellect and make a whole lot more money in the industry if we wanted. We're doing this out of love and passion. And I'm glad somebody here mentioned passion, timing, and pragmatism, in my humble opinion. And I think those are really the passion and pragmatism to me, or especially those two P's. I like that. Really aspirational here. So yeah, do think about that. And again, it's something we say to all our students, Courtney, that if you don't get excited about that gap you're working on, if you're not that, I remember when I was doing my PhD, I was that annoying person who was out at a party talking about, why we needed clean needle programs for people with HIV. And let me tell you, that's not what you want to talk about in a bar. But you need to have that burning passion so much that you're really, and people talk about, you need to be balanced and this holistic person. And I look back and I was pretty lopsided. I'm not saying you have to be like that for forever, but at this stage in your life, I don't think it's bad to have a little bit of a lopsidedness because you have this huge passion in your life. Okay. Any thoughts? We've gone a little bit wider than the grant proposals here, but if you are proposing for research, you're throwing yourself into a project and committing to do something important. So I think these ingredients do need to be there in the background. Thoughts, Courtney?
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to apply for a 5-year grant on an idea that you're not very passionate about, because you're going to be spending the next 5 years in your office working on it.
Yeah. Whoops. But I know people who have done that. They say, "Oh, well, I think I have a bigger chance of getting this funding here, so I'm going to optimize my chances to get the funding," and then I hate my life. And I think you really need to look at yourself in the mirror and ask if maybe a career change is in order if you're thinking that way. Okay, guys. Look, I think we're at a good stopping point today. Let us know in the comments below if you're on Team Replay and watch this. If you have any questions for us, Courtney and I always go back over the comments. And of course, any of you who are working on your proposals, try these methods out. Let us know how you do. If you find it helpful, let us know in the comments. Other people really benefit from that in the community, hearing from your experiences. We take the philosophy that no question that you got is too dumb. And when you pose questions to us and we can answer in the community, it benefits the whole world. So don't be afraid, don't be shy to speak up and reach out to Courtney or I. Our emails are both very simple. Mine's David Stuckler at FastTrackGrad.com. Courtney's at Prof McNamara at FastTrackGrad.com. Don't send us emails the day before you got something to do, but we love hearing from you. And do take that poll in the Facebook group. Let us know what you want to hear more from us in the group, because we are creating our content. And Courtney, we're going to do that systematic review challenge. I'm pretty excited about that. I know we've been kicking it out for a while. We want to get back from holidays. So I think, what do you think? We're going to kick that up in a couple of weeks. What do you say?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. That's gonna be good. All right, guys. I think that's a wrap. I am currently in Croatia, so I'm gonna go get some tasty seafood. We got another comment here that I just gotta bring up. I know it is not good, but the best discussions about work take place in a bar. Yeah, I've had some great conversations about work and some great ideas scribbled on napkins in a bar. That's not necessarily the easiest for people with work-life balance. I know, Courtney, with your kids, that might not have been accessible to you, but yeah, and I know some professors in business schools who think they need to get people to actually play together, and they experiment with different gaming platforms to get professors outside their element, work element, where I'm in the office, got to talk about grades, to get them to just kind of be in a setting that can bring to the fore their creativity together. And sometimes that does take that little bit of shift outside of your usual zone. It's kind of the same way as well. Some of your best ideas might come in the shower or when you're on a walk. So glad you guys got value out of this session, and Courtney, glad you could come back on with us. I was worried about losing you. And yeah, we will see all of you next week. Take care, everybody.